Why do we need to learn this stuff anyways?
Yeah. Ow!
Well, Billy, I'll tell you why it's important to learn about the American Revolution.
Ha! Who said that?
Your conscience.
Really?
No. Okay.
Well, tell me something about the American Revolution.
Okay, I'll tell you about some of the weapons that were used. The cannon. A cannon is a type of artillery, usually large and tubular in shape, that uses gunpowder or other explosive-based propellants to launch a projectile over a distance. Cannons vary in caliber, range, mobility, rate of fire, and firepower. Different types combine these attributes in varying degrees, depending on their intended use. The flintlock pistol. Flintlock is the general term for any firearm based on the flintlock mechanism. Introduced in about 1630, the flintlock rapidly replaced early firearm ignition technologies, such as the matchlock and the wheel lock mechanisms. It continued to be in common use for over 2 centuries. The musket. And a big weapon, the British ship, the man-o'-war. The British weapon, the Brown Bess. The Brown Bess is a nickname for the British Army's land pattern musket and its family. The musket was used for the expansion of the British Empire and acquired symbolic importance at least as significant as its physical importance. It was in use for over 100 years with many certain changes in its design. These variations included the long land pattern, the short land pattern, the India pattern, New Land pattern musket, sea service muskets, and others. The French weapon, the Charleville. The Charleville rifle musket was the primary musket used by the French during their participation in the American Revolution. These smooth-bore muskets were named after the Armory Charleville, Ardennes, France. It was also distributed to the Americas and later became the pattern of the Springfield musket of 1795. They are 60.5 inches with a 45-inch barrel and have U.S. stamped on the buttstock. It fired a .969 caliber lead ball smaller than the Brown Bess, which normally allowed for less kick than contemporary muskets. It had a fire ratio of approximately 2 to 3 shots per minute and maximum range for 200 meters, although only fairly accurate for up to 50 meters. Then the American weapon, the Kentucky long rifle. The Kentucky long rifle developed on the American frontier in the period beginning in the 1740s and continued its development until it passed out of fashion in the late 19th century. It is interesting to use the manufacturers continued in the Appalachian Mountains of Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky, and North Carolina, well into the 20th century as a practical and efficient firearm for these still brutal segments of the nation. Long rifles could be made entirely by hand, which could not be said of the modern breech loaders such as the Winchester rifles.
Now that I know about some of the weapons, tell me about some of the battles.
Okay. The Boston Massacre was an event that led up to the American Revolution. It happened on the day of March the 5th. American colonists were gathering around the British soldiers. The British commander told the soldiers not to fire upon the colonists. But one colonist that sounded like the commander said, "Why don't we fire?" So when the soldiers heard that, they fired and killed 5 colonists.
The rebels take Fort Ticonderoga. The Green Mountain Boys snuck into Fort Ticonderoga and took control of it after overpowering the guard and capturing the general.
Battle of Bunker Hill. Will Prescott led 12,000 Minutemen to Breed's Hill and prepared to attack the British ships in the Boston harbor. Will Howe brought 2,400 British ships across the river and attacked. It took the British 3 tries before they were successful and finally took Breed's Hill. 1,000 British men were killed.
That's good.
Battle of Long Island. Washington led troops to New York. Howe had 34,000 forces, and Washington had less than 20,000 poorly trained. 1,400 Americans were killed, and the British won.
Trenton, New Jersey. Washington led his troops across the Delaware River and attacked Trenton. The Hessians had 1,400 strong troops with 38 officers. The Americans defeated the Hessians and took Trenton. Washington made Cornwallis attack Trenton, while the Americans slipped behind and attacked and took Princeton.
Battle of Saratoga. Burgundy led a force across Lake Champlain and took Fort Ticonderoga. He sent a second force through Vermont, which was stopped by the Americans. The Green Mountain Boys rushed up to New York to help the Americans at Saratoga. The Americans surrounded and defeated the British.
Kings Mountain, North Carolina. At Kings Mountain, General Greene and General Morgan surrounded the British and won.
Yorktown, Virginia. General Cornwallis disobeyed orders to return to New York and instead camped at the Yorktown Peninsula in Virginia. The French joined up with the Americans on land, and a French navy was sent to blockade Yorktown. Washington arrived and laid siege to Yorktown, and eventually the British surrendered because they didn't have any food or supplies.
Many things happened after the Revolution. Like we got our freedom, but we didn't get our freedom right away. First, we had to sign a treaty. The Treaty of Paris. Now, here's some terms and agreements that were made by it.
The Treaty of Paris. The borders, northern border at the Great Lakes, southern border at Florida, and from east to west, it extends from the Atlantic to the Mississippi River. The conditions were Britain recognizes the U.S. as an independent nation, and states would give back lands to the loyalists of Britain.
Yes, I know something about the Revolution. It isn't boring after all.
Yeah, I know it's not.
Who are you anyways?
You'll never know.
It's
It's time
for a video quiz!